In 1934, a wonderful story unfolded. The Patricks from White Oak Township up near Dansville moved to the Galpin farm on Plymouth Road near Dixboro. And this family that you see here on the screen is the result of that move for the most part. These are people that are part of the Patrick clan that originated with 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. And in 1934, they moved to the Galpin farm, and from there a sequence of events evolved. That is Gladys Galpin, the oldest of the Patrick children. That is Daniel Patrick and his second wife, Ethel. That is Wilma Billy Leslie, who lived in Dixboro. There's Gladys Galpin again, the oldest of the siblings. And her husband is inside the car, Ivan Galpin. There's Ivan. He was the first uncle to pass in 1955 at a young age. But the Patricks loved children, they loved picnics, they loved to eat. And here's a typical Patrick outing with lots of food and fellowship. Many of the children there are now, of course, adults. That's Wayne Malco on the right with the blue shirt and the yellow sweater. Bud Leslie across the way with a bow tie. That's uncharacteristic of him. And there are the patriarch and the matriarch of the Patrick clan. This is the youngest sister, Myrna, with one of her offspring. And we're seeing Wilma, Billy Leslie, and Bud Leslie again in this sequence. The Patrick clan had kind of an unusual circumstance. 2 brothers married 2 sisters. Bud Leslie was married to Wilma Patrick, and Dick Leslie was married to Grace Patrick. And the 2 brothers and the 2 sisters lived next door in Dixboro. This is out at Base Lake, where Bud and Billy Leslie had a cottage. And it was visited this day by Myrna and Roger Patrick and their 2 cute little daughters, Maureen and Diana. That's Gary Leslie and his brother Kent, who doesn't appear to be too attracted to that fish that Gary caught. Gary was born in 1943, and Kent came along a few years later. And you can see he's a little bit apprehensive about holding that fish. Kent was a fullback at Ann Arbor High School back in the 60s, and you'll see him demonstrate some of his style right here. It looks like he's going up the middle for several yards. He does not like that fish. The whole family had a lot of fun out at Base Lake at Bud and Billy's cottage through the years. Here's that fisherman, Gary Leslie again, who will be celebrating his 70th birthday in 2013. Seems hard to believe, doesn't it? A real fisherman. I think he's fishing with Grandma Leslie. Grandma Leslie used to love to fish, and I think she would take her her grandchildren fishing when she was out at Base Lake at the cottage. And as you can see, they were usually pretty successful in catching fish. There's Gary again, the real fisherman. This is, let's see, but this is up at, well, this is back out in Dixboro. That's Gary and Kent, as I said, 2 brothers, 2 of the 3 sons of Bud and Billy Leslie. And on this occasion, it looks like we're going, oh boy, to another picnic. Yes, we are. There in the front of the picture, Art and Hattie Rife, who were actually the grandparents of the Rife children, but they were included in the Patrick picnics. This is Susie Galpin demonstrating her prowess on the slide. That's Gary, and here comes Kent. Slowly but surely, he's gonna make it. Oh, he'll laugh when he sees this picture. Here comes Susie again. Susie was kind of a tragic story. She passed away in 1984 at only the age of 47. One of the sad parts of the Patrick clan that we experienced. And again, the picnic. Grandpa Dan with his usual hat. I believe that is Dale Leslie. It could be someone else, but that smile gives it away, and those dimples. And he's being held by his Aunt Gladys. That's Bert Galpin, the senior grandfather of the Galpin clan. Sure, he was invited to join the Patricks at their picnic. This is Bob Rife, and I think, I'm not sure who he has in his arms, but that's his son Richard, right in the swing next to him, so maybe it's his other son, Donald Rife. Bob and Dorothy Rife had two boys, Donald and Richard, and I'm almost positive that that's Richard in the swing, so perhaps that's Donald, or it might be Fat Cheek Dale again, who knows. A trip to the cemetery in Dansville was often part of the Patrick tradition to visit the grave site of previous relatives. Maureen and Diana Place are the ones prancing around in the graveyard, and Diana remembers that her mother said, "Don't step on the gravestones." You can see she's measuring her steps very carefully. But what a cute pair they were, Maureen and Diana Place. This is at the Taylor Farm. The Taylors had a farm up near Stockbridge, and we were there for some sort of family outing. And sure enough, everybody had to ride a bicycle or a tricycle, and around the circle they went. The Taylors still farm that property on Dexter Trail near Stockbridge. In fact, here's a shot from the field. Again, you have to remember this is probably in the early to mid 50s when this movie was being filmed by Richard Leslie. So some of the equipment is a little dated, but nevertheless it got the job done. So out in the field they were, the Taylors, busily combining. That's John Taylor, Sr. Looks like he had broken his arm when he was in that sequence. And this undoubtedly is one of the Taylor young men, either Johnny, Bob, or Gordon. John and Marion Taylor also had two sons. That seemed to be the norm in the Patrick family for a while there. But they're shoveling that grain. There was never a dull moment when you lived on a farm, and there probably still isn't. It's a 7-day-a-week job. And the Patricks sure had a great tradition when it came to farming. The Patrick sequence, I might add, Gladys was the oldest of the Patrick siblings, born in 1907. Lucille came next in 1909. Then Marion in 1911. Dan Jr., born in 1914. Grace Leslie, my mother, was born in 1917. And then Billy in 1921, and Myrna Place wrapped up the clan, and she was born in 1923. So in 16 years, they had 7 children, 6 girls and 1 boy. That's Dean Patrick. He was born in 1948, just a few weeks before I was. He's being fed there, I believe, by his dad. Yes, that's Dan Patrick, the only male sibling in that Patrick clan, feeding his son, Dean. We always joked that whenever my dad took movies at a family outing, Myrna was eating. And in her defense, she didn't eat any more than anybody else, but my dad always seemed to have her film. Well, she's eating again. Maybe she did eat a lot. I don't know. But he seemed to get a kick out of filming Myrna when she was eating. This is Diana Place, Roger and Myrna's second daughter. She was a real cutie. She was born in 1948, in January of that year. So she's a little older than she's depicted here as we do this narration. That's her older sister, Maureen, who was born a couple years earlier than Diana. There also were 2 boys in the Place family, Bob Place and Tom Place. So they had 4 children in the Place family, and again, Myrna, the mother, being the last of the series of siblings in that Patrick clan. But Myrna and Roger probably would not have met if it hadn't been for that move in 1934 that brought the Patrick clan to nearby Dixboro. And certainly my father and my mother would not have met had it not been for that move by the Patrick group. Here's Dan Patrick, the patriarch, and Ethel, his second wife, the matriarch of the Patrick group. Grandpa Dan always had colorful ties. And this must be, I think, this is Mark Leslie, the third of a series of 3 boys born to Bud and Billy Leslie. And that looks like it's me. And there's Gary, and Ken is to his, or to our left as we look at the screen, and I think that's baby Mark, who was born in 1951. Kind of stretching out there on the bed. Mark was a big baby, 10 pounds plus. And he was born on February 27th. The day after, I fell into the Fleming Creek and was rescued by Bob Rife. The story was that Aunt Billy walked up and down Plymouth Road looking for me, a missing toddler at the time, and she was 9 months pregnant and delivered the very next day on the 27th. But those boys have been extremely close to me through the years. They're double cousins, or as they often refer to me as a half-brother, because the 2 brothers married the 2 sisters. This is down in Ypsilanti, where Dan Patrick and his family lived for much of my childhood. They eventually moved to a farm on Bradley Road up near Gregory. Grandpa Dan always prided himself of his garden, his flower garden. And here we see the garden in the background with, I believe that's Ethel, Myrna, and Aunt Rose, who I think was, yes, the sister of my original grandmother, Grandma Grace. Boys always like to play tractor, don't they? And there's Mark and Dale, kind of inseparable when they were that age, playing on one of the tractors. There's Bob Place, skinny leg Bob. Oh gosh, what a character. Yeah, he's a dancer. Those Patricks, they love to dance. Oh, he'll laugh when he sees this. Bob Place, born in 1952. Mark and Dale, again. Mark born in 51, Dale born in 1948. Just youngsters here in the early 50s. Looks like they were getting ready to go to something pretty formal. Maybe it was Mother's Day. I wonder if it wasn't. They all seem to, or both seem to be kind of dressed up for the occasion. Big Mark 40, we called him, chewing that gum. And there are my parents, Richard and Grace Leslie, married on August 25th, 1940, in the Martha Mary Chapel at Greenfield Village. And they remained together from 1940 up until my mother's death in 1997. But here they're posing with me and Mark. My mother always had kind of unusual purses, and that one looks like a suitcase. Here's Grandpa Dan again. As I said, he was a real gardener. He had a green thumb. He also usually had a dog that loved to lick the faces of little boys. Grandpa Dan was quite a man, and he enjoyed his family so much. Another outing. This one may have been, oh gosh, by the way people are dressed, I wonder if this isn't a Christmas observance. There's Marlene, a young lady that stayed with us in our home for many years, Marlene Brown. This is Dick Coleman, who married Joyce Malco. Dick was in the state police and later retired as a detective lieutenant. This is his wife, Joyce Coleman. She was a real cutie. I always thought she was very beautiful, and I still do. She'll be 79 in 2013. That looks like, is that Bob Place again? I guess he's grown a little bit. And behind him is Mark Leslie with his official Dicksboro shirt on. This is John Taylor, who married Marion, the third of the Patrick siblings, and her son, Johnny Bob Taylor, and that's her other son, Gordon. And this was taken at where the Places lived, and in fact, Roger Place still lives on Ford Road, just outside of Dicksboro. That's Marion Patrick Taylor, who unfortunately did pass away at a young age due to cancer. But for the most part, all the Patrick siblings lived long and fruitful lives, and they stayed married to their original spouses, which I think is truly admirable, especially in this day and age. Oh, it looks like Maureen and Diana kind of showing off. I think this was taken up at, no, this was in their own backyard, for heaven's sakes. This was in the Place backyard right there on Ford Road. Oh, here they are. Diana and Maureen with that, oh, that show-off Dale in the background. They always look so nice. Myrna had those two girls just really, really standing out in their appearance. And besides the fact that they were kind of cute to begin with. My parents, of course, they were real favorites of theirs. This looks like a Sunday going to the Dicksboro Church. I think this was Mother's Day, because remember how mothers would wear a corsage on Mother's Day, and if it was white, your mother was living, and if it was pink, your mother was deceased. You remember that tradition? Oh, oh well, no one remembers it. And of course, I loved to take pictures. I have to admit, when my dad gave me the camera, I did chop a few heads off. The Melco brothers were farmers up near Stockbridge, and as I said, William Melco, Bill Melco, married Lucille Patrick, and they farmed there for the longest time. In fact, that farm still remains. And the Melco clan, Wayne Melco, the son, has the farm now. Not sure where this is. It looks like it was taken in a park somewhere. No, this is back up at the Melcos. That's John Melco and Gladys Melco. John was the brother of Bill Melco. This is interesting. This is little David Scott Coleman. Oh my goodness. Dick and Joyce's little boy. And he was a cutie, wasn't he? He was their firstborn. And I think he was born in the early 60s. So it could be that this movie now has advanced in time. I believe that's true. Scott was born in the 60s. Back into the garden again. There's Grandpa Dan and Ethel. As I said, Grandpa Dan did love his garden, especially the flowers. Oh boy, he was so proud of his flowers. And of course, there's a lot of weeding to do when you have a garden that looks like that. But he was up to it. Oh boy, another outing. Everyone's beginning to look a little older now. A little bit more into the teenage years for some of these Patrick grandchildren. That's Lucille Melco and her husband Bill, the back head of Marion Taylor. And there's Garvin Smith. Garvin married Susie Smith, or excuse me, Susie Galpin. And Garvin stayed in our home for a few years while he was still in high school. I think this is in the basement of our home when we moved to Greenview in Ann Arbor. It just looks awfully familiar to me. And undoubtedly, with that tree in the background, it was taken at Christmas time. There's Eleanor Patrick, Dan Patrick's wife. And there's little Cindy Melco. Oh my goodness gracious, look at that. Dick Coleman must have been on duty. He was there. And I remember he parked his state police car in front of our house, which drew a lot of attention. That's my own mother, Grace Leslie, that you're seeing there, looking out. Looks like we're opening presents. And of course, we always got Grandpa Dan a present, each family did, and he had more presents to open than Carter has pills. That's Roger Place there with a tie on. Everybody wore a tie back in those days to those family occasions. Remember that? Boy, that sure has changed. Bill Malco smoking a cigarette. Bill, you wouldn't get away with that now. And again, everybody looking on, I think, as Grandpa Dan and Ethel are opening up presents. Oh my gosh, there's Joyce again, and now who is that in her arms? I don't know. That must be, I don't know if that's Sherry, her second born. No, couldn't be. Well, maybe it is. Certainly wasn't Scott. Scott would have been older by now. But look at the presents. And I remember Grandpa Dan saying, gosh, when you have these in the future, or please have these in the future even after I'm gone. This was a boy-girl party, and do you remember playing the game Wink-'em? Someone would sit in your chair, and there would be a vacant chair, and that person would wink at someone to draw their attention to come across and move into their seat. Well, what you tried to do is to keep the person from moving. That's Bob Hayes, believe it or not. This is Malcolm Campbell. Some of these names aren't going to mean much. Kay Spencer, who is a friend of Laplace's from St. Thomas. Grab onto that boy. Don't let him go. That was Richard Reif, and Marlene was holding on to him. Somebody had winked at Richard, and he was trying to escape. It was a fun game. You know, I'd still like to play that game. I think it was... There's Kay Spencer again. She was a real nice-looking young lady from St. Thomas, one of the friends of the places. And gosh, this must have been one of our first boy-girl parties. I hardly remember this. There's Kent, Leslie, and Cheryl. I think that is Cheryl Parker. And there's the DJ, Dale R. for Radio Leslie. He's already spinning the placards. And of course, he never shows off, but that's why he was a DJ, right? He was a show-off. And a little bit more of the boy-girl party, and you can see they were pretty harmless gatherings back then. Quite a contrast to the parties you hear about these days. There's a role reversal with Richard trying to hold Marlene in her chair during this game of Wink-'em. That's Lachlan Campbell back there. What a great family, and thank you for watching.